Jack Calloway always said he felt most alive when surrounded by the vastness of nature. After the war, a war that had stolen his youth, his friends, and a piece of his soul, he found solace in the wilderness. The forests and mountains of Montana were his refuge, a place where the noise of helicopters and the haunting cries of comrades faded into the soft murmur of streams and the rustle of wind through pine trees. By the time he reached 78, Jack had spent decades hiking, camping, and hunting in the backcountry. He was a man who respected the land and its creatures, carrying the lessons of the jungle with him. Never underestimate the wild, he would say to anyone willing to listen. Out here, it's not about man against nature. It's about harmony, understanding your place. This trip, however, felt different. Jack had chosen to camp deep in a remote stretch of the Rockies, a place few ventured. His battered pickup had taken him as far as the logging road would allow. And from there, he hiked another 12 miles into the wilderness, carrying everything he needed on his back. He didn't tell anyone exactly where he was going. It wasn't that he didn't have friends or family. His niece Sarah always worried about him, but Jack liked his solitude. It gave him time to think, to remember, and to make peace with the memories that still haunted him. As he set up camp near a pristine alpine meadow, Jack felt the familiar satisfaction of self-reliance. His tent, though small, was sturdy, and his supplies were neatly organized. A fishing rod, a compact stove, a well-worn journal, and of course his rifle. He had no plans to hunt on this trip, but he never ventured into bear country unarmed. The .45-70 lever-action rifle was more than a tool. It was an extension of himself. The first day passed uneventfully. Jack spent the morning fishing in a crystal-clear stream, catching 2 fat trout that he cooked over his campfire. The afternoon was spent exploring the nearby ridges, his boots crunching over rocks and moss. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jack settled by the fire, his journal in hand. He wrote about the day, his pen scratching across the page, and reflected on the peace he felt in the stillness. But as darkness fell, the forest seemed to change. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. The usual symphony of nocturnal life crickets, owls, and the distant howl of a wolf was absent. Jack noticed the silence but shrugged it off. He'd experienced odd nights in the wild before, nights when the land seemed to hold its breath. Probably just a big predator passing through, he muttered, throwing another log onto the fire. Jack woke suddenly in the dead of night. At first he wasn't sure what had pulled him from his sleep. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting a faint orange light through the thin walls of his tent. The night was utterly silent, too silent. No rustling leaves, no chirping insects, just an oppressive, unnatural quiet. Then he heard it. A low, resonant sound that made his skin crawl. It wasn't the growl of a wolf or the hoot of an owl. It was deeper, more primal. Jack froze, every muscle in his body tensing as his ears strained to pick up more. The sound came again, this time accompanied by the heavy crunch of footsteps. Something big was moving just beyond the glow of the fire. Reaching for his flashlight, Jack unzipped the tent as quietly as he could. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands were steady as he swept the beam of light across the campsite. At first he saw nothing, just the faint outlines of trees and the glimmer of the stream. But then, at the edge of the clearing, he caught a glimpse of movement. The bear was massive, its dark fur blending into the shadows as it lumbered closer. Jack had seen grizzlies before, but this one was unlike any he'd encountered. Its sheer size was staggering, its presence almost otherworldly. The bear sniffed the air, its nose twitching as it caught the lingering scent of trout in campfire smoke. Jack's mind raced. He knew the rules: stay calm, don't panic. Slowly he reached for his rifle, keeping his movements deliberate and measured. The bear hadn't seen him yet, but it was only a matter of time. As he raised the rifle, Jack felt a pang of guilt. He had no desire to harm the animal. It was just doing what bears do, following its nose to an easy meal. But this was his camp, his sanctuary, and he wasn't about to let it be taken from him. The bear stopped, its massive head turning toward the tent. Jack's breath caught in his throat as their eyes met. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The bear's gaze was intelligent, almost knowing. It wasn't fear he saw in those eyes. nor anger, but something deeper. Respect, curiosity, whatever it was, it unsettled him. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the bear turned and lumbered back into the forest, its hulking form disappearing into the shadows. Jack lowered the rifle, his hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline wore off. He stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting by the fire with his rifle across his lap, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The bear didn't return, but the encounter left him shaken. The next morning, Jack debated whether to pack up and head back to the truck. Part of him wanted to leave, to put distance between himself and whatever had visited his camp. But another part of him, the stubborn, battle-hardened part, refused to be driven out. This was his place, his time to reconnect with the wild and himself. He wouldn't let fear dictate his actions. Jack spent the day reinforcing his camp. He moved his tent closer to the stream, cleared away brush to improve visibility, and set up a perimeter of makeshift alarms using fishing line and tin cans. He knew it wasn't much, but it gave him a sense of control. That evening, he kept the fire burning brighter and longer than usual, its light casting long shadows across the clearing. But the forest remained quiet. Too quiet. The usual sounds of life hadn't returned, and the uneasy feeling in Jack's gut persisted. As he sat by the fire, sipping coffee from his thermos, he couldn't shake the sense that he was being watched. The bear had left, but something of presence and energy lingered. It was on the third night that things took a turn Jack could never have anticipated. He had gone to bed late, exhaustion finally overcoming his unease. The fire was reduced to embers, and the forest was as silent as ever. Jack's dreams were vivid and chaotic, filled with the faces of old comrades and the sounds of the jungle. He woke suddenly to the sound of something snapping. A branch? No, it was louder, closer. Jack bolted upright, his hand instinctively reaching for his rifle. The tin can alarm he'd rigged rattled violently, the sound piercing the night. Whatever had tripped it was big and close. Too close. Before Jack could react, a shadow loomed over the tent. The bear was back, its massive form silhouetted against the faint glow of the embers. Jack barely had time to grab his flashlight and rifle before the tent collapsed around him, the bear's powerful weight tearing through the fabric. He scrambled out, his heart pounding as he tried to orient himself. The bear stood just a few feet away, its dark eyes locked onto him. Jack raised the rifle, his hand steady despite the chaos. He knew he had one shot, and it had to count. But as he stared into the bear's eyes, he hesitated. The creature wasn't attacking. It was standing its ground, asserting its dominance. Jack felt a strange mix of awe and fear, a primal recognition of the bear's power and majesty. Slowly, Jack lowered the rifle. "You win," he muttered under his breath. The bear huffed, its breath visible in the cold night air, before turning and disappearing into the forest once again. Jack didn't sleep for the rest of the night. As dawn broke, he packed up his camp, his movements slow and deliberate. The wilderness had taught him many lessons over the years, but none as profound as this. The bear wasn't an enemy, it was a reminder of his place in the grand scheme of things. Out here, he was just another creature, subject to the same rules as everything else. As he hiked back to his truck, Jack felt a sense of gratitude. The encounter had shaken him, but it had also given him clarity. Life was fragile, unpredictable, and beautiful. He would carry this experience with him, a story to share and a memory to treasure. Jack never returned to that part of the Rockies, but he often thought of the bear and the silent understanding they had shared. In the end, it wasn't fear or dominance that defined the encounter, but respect that went both ways. Story 2? The town of Timber Falls was no stranger to the presence of wildlife. Nestled deep in the Rocky Mountains, the community had always respected its wild neighbors, deer wandering the streets at dawn, foxes darting through backyards, and the occasional distant sighting of a bear. But for all their familiarity with the wilderness, no one could have predicted the events of that fateful day. The morning began unremarkably. Students shuffled into classrooms, teachers prepared their lessons, and the bell rang out its usual call. The local high school was alive with the hum of activity. Laughter echoed in the hallways. Gym class was in full swing, and the cafeteria staff prepared lunch for the day. But as the clock ticked forward, the peaceful rhythm of the school day would be shattered in a way that left scars far deeper than the physical. It started with a shadow, a flicker of movement at the tree line beyond the school grounds. The first to notice was a group of students during their outdoor gym class. At first they assumed it was just another deer, or maybe a coyote, both common sights in the area. But as the figure emerged from the trees, its sheer size and power became unmistakable. An enormous grizzly bear had wandered out of the forest, its presence commanding attention. At over 800 pounds, the bear was a giant, and its every movement was deliberate, almost calculated. The students froze, their laughter replaced by hushed murmurs of awe and fear. One student, Sam, pulled out his phone to take a video, but the gym teacher, Mr. Thompson, quickly intervened. "Everyone stay calm. Move back slowly," he instructed, his voice steady but firm. At first, the bear seemed uninterested in the group. It sniffed the air, its massive head swinging from side to side, and began to amble closer. Then something shifted. Perhaps it caught the scent of food from the cafeteria, or felt threatened by the sudden noise and activity of the school. Whatever the trigger, the bear's demeanor changed. It stood on its hind legs, surveying the scene, and then dropped down with a loud thud before moving toward the open gymnasium doors. Inside the gym, the atmosphere was one of confusion and escalating panic. A volleyball game was underway, and the players barely noticed the bear until it was already inside. The sight of the massive animal caused immediate pandemonium. Balls scattered across the floor as students and staff screamed and scrambled to find safety. The bear, now visibly agitated, moved erratically through the gym. Its claws scraped against the polished floor, and its powerful frame knocked over equipment and benches as it tried to make sense of its surroundings. Mr. Thompson, along with two other teachers, sprang into action. "Everyone to the locker rooms. Now," he shouted, using his former park ranger training to take control of the situation. Most students obeyed, rushing to the relative safety of the locker rooms. But in the chaos, some were too scared to move, frozen in place or hiding behind overturned tables and bleachers. Amid the commotion, the bear's confusion turned to aggression. It swiped at a stack of gym mats, sending them flying, and charged at a vending machine, shattering the glass. The noise only fueled the panic as students tripped over one another in their desperate attempt to escape. In the face of the unfolding disaster, acts of bravery began to emerge. Emily, a senior and captain of the track team, noticed a group of younger students huddled near the bleachers, too frightened to move. Without hesitation, she ran back to them. "It's going to be okay," she said, her voice steady despite her own fear. "Follow me and stay low." Leading the group with remarkable composure, Emily guided the younger students to the safety of the locker rooms, where they were met by staff who quickly locked the doors behind them. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson and his colleagues were doing everything they could to keep the bear distracted. One teacher grabbed a broom and banged it against the floor, while another used a whistle from the first aid kit to create sharp, piercing sounds. The bear's attention shifted between the noise and the movement, giving more students a chance to escape. Outside, the school's emergency protocol was already in motion. The principal called local authorities, who in turn contacted wildlife experts. A helicopter was dispatched to the scene, and a team of rangers prepared to tranquilize and relocate the bear. For those outside the gym, the minutes dragged on like hours. Parents began arriving, frantic for news of their children. Emergency vehicles lined the streets, and the sound of sirens filled the air. Inside the gym, the situation reached a critical point. The bear, still confused and agitated, made its way toward the cafeteria doors where the scent of food seemed to draw its attention. A group of custodians acted quickly, using carts and chairs to block its path. Their quick thinking likely prevented further damage. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the wildlife team arrived. Using a combination of loud noises and tranquilizer darts, they managed to guide the bear out of the school and back toward the forest. The animal's powerful frame eventually slowed as the tranquilizers took effect, and it was safely transported to a remote location far from Timber Falls. The gymnasium, once filled with laughter and activity, now bore the marks of the bear's rampage. Broken glass, overturned equipment, and claw marks on the walls served as stark reminders of the day's events. Several students had been injured during the chaos, though thankfully none of the injuries were life-threatening. However, the emotional toll was significant. Counselors were brought in to help students and staff process the trauma, and the school remained closed for several days as repairs were made. The community of Timber Falls rallied together in the wake of the incident. Fundraisers were organized to support the school, and local businesses offered their services to help with repairs. A memorial service was held to honor the resilience of those involved and to reflect on the lessons learned. In the aftermath of the incident, questions arose about how such a situation could be prevented in the future. Wildlife experts explained that the bear's behavior was likely driven by hunger or disorientation, possibly exacerbated by habitat loss or human encroachment. The school implemented new safety measures, including reinforced barriers, secure doors, and wildlife awareness training for staff and students. But beyond the practical changes, there was a deeper shift in the community's perspective. "This wasn't just an attack," said Mr. Thompson at the memorial. "It was a reminder of how closely we live to the wild and how important it is to respect that balance. The bear didn't come here to harm us, it was acting on instinct in a world that's becoming harder for animals to navigate." The events at Timber Falls High School will forever be etched in the memories of those who lived through it. It was a day of fear and chaos, but also one of bravery, compassion, and unity. As the grizzly bear was safely returned to the wilderness, it left behind more than just claw marks and broken glass. It left a community forever changed. The people of Timber Falls emerged stronger, more aware of their connection to the natural world, and more committed to coexisting with the wildlife that shares their home. This story serves as a powerful reminder of nature's unpredictable beauty and the resilience of the human spirit. Let it inspire us all to respect the wild, prepare for the unexpected, and find harmony in a shared world. If you found this video insightful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for the latest videos on wildlife safety, survival tips, and fascinating animal stories. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.